Hi everyone, and welcome to mini lecture 24, where we're going to talk about document design principles. Before we begin, you'll need the following materials for the lecture assignment. You'll either need access to a print or digital document, your choice, and you'll need a document to write on for the weekly homework. The purpose and goals for this mini lecture are as follows. We'll first define the principles of strong document design and examine the impacts of document design choices. So we look at a document like this and it's just bad. I mean, there are so many things that we can consider, but ultimately what it comes down to is we don't really know its purpose. And the information itself is difficult to navigate. We've got different dates, we've got different ideas, we have different fonts. As the reader, we don't know where our eye is supposed to go to. We don't know what is supposed to be emphasized. Like, should we take group lessons because of the prizes? Are preschool children allowed? What happens if I've got an eighth grader? Are they allowed to attend? What kind of games are going to be played? Is that the emphasis in piano lessons? And so we look at this, and again, it's just an example of a bad document, or what I would call, from more of a technical writing perspective, an ugly document. Again, we don't know how to understand this information. We don't know how the different bits work together. We don't know what's supposed to be emphasized, what's supposed to be prioritized, what the reader should really focus on. Now, this is a consequence of bad document design, is that your reader will become lost. They won't understand where the emphasis is supposed to be. They won't understand what you as the writer want them to take away from the piece that you are presenting them. So today we are going to explore 4 basic principles to ensure that regardless of whatever kind of print document you're designing, be it an academic paper, a poster presentation, or even a PowerPoint, that you are creating something that the reader can not only understand, but understand in the way that you want them to. So when we think about the design principles, we can think of the word CRAP. That's how I always remember it. And what CRAP stands for is contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. And again, even though we just looked at a flyer, these principles still also apply to academic writing as well, especially as you move through your academic career and into your professional career. You'll have to design longer documents, compose longer documents, things like reports, proposals, things of that nature, that you will need to think about, okay, well, how can I design this document so my audience, my readers, can find the information easily and understand what content I am prioritizing and what I really want them to focus on. So the first thing we want to consider will be contrast, so the C in the CRAP principles. Now that's deliberately making one component of the design noticeably different from other similar components. Now, contrast is used to draw attention to a specific part of the text. Think about, a title on a paper. It's typically centered. That's using alignment to create contrast. If you think about like a poster presentation, usually the title itself is written in a much larger font, perhaps a different color, perhaps in a different font style. And so what's important to remember, though, really, with contrast, is that it must be noticeably different. So let's look at a couple of examples down here. So we've got good contrast right here because the word good and the word contrast are noticeably different. I know that good is probably at least 10 point sizes bigger than the word contrast. Whereas we look at bad contrast, As the reader, I would look at that and say, is that a mistake? Because are they trying to create contrast, or did they just mess up on their formatting? And then that can hurt your ethos, your authority as the writer, because then the reader will wonder, well, if they were careless enough to leave this in here, what else might be wrong with their document? We also can think about it in terms of color as well. So we have good contrast where we have one word that's written in pink and the other that's written in blue. Whereas with the bad contrast example underneath it, we've got two very similar shades of green. And again, what that comes down to is, was this intentional? Was it just oversight by the writer or the editor? And if so, what else could be wrong in this document? The next principle that we want to look at will be repetition. And now this is repeating visual elements to create unity. Now, with repetition, it is most commonly used, especially in longer academic and professional documents, to help the reader navigate your content and to help them understand sort of the hierarchy of information. So, what is important, what is not as important. Now, when we think about repetition, it is most commonly represented or demonstrated with font size, color, and style. So let's look at an example to put this into a more clear context. So think about headings. If you've ever used headings in an academic paper, you'll find that you have sometimes major headings, subheadings, and then your body text, right? And so with repetition, that means that all of your headings will be formatted in the same way. It means that they are all going to, let's say, be a 20-point font size. They are all going to be bold, and they are all going to be left aligned. Whereas your subheadings, so in this case, let's say heading 2, they're all going to be a 15-point font size, and they are going to be italicized, but they are not going to be, you won't bold them. Now, with your body text, that is going to just be perhaps your more traditional approach, Times New Roman, 12-point font, things of that nature. But what's important is that you are consistent throughout your entire document. That if something is a body text, it is written in the exact same style as all other body text. Now, if you were to write it, let's say in one section, your body text is Times New Roman 12-point font, and then in another section, it's Arial 16-point font. Then your reader is going to say, oh, are these two bits of information equal? Are they both considered body text? If not, then why, what significance does this different design, this Arial 16-point font text, why is it different? Is the writer trying to get me to see it as more important, again, or is it just oversight? Is it just formatting oversight? And so you want to make sure that with your design choices, when you create, because we can see how contrast is playing out here. We know that heading 1 is different than heading 2, and that's going to be different from your body text. We've created that contrast. Now we want to repeat it in such a way that it has meaning in the document. So if you find yourself using headings, or if you find yourself, in a position where you're making different formatting choices, you want to make sure that you are consistent throughout the text. And that's going to be basically so your readers understand the context in which they should view the information. Should they read it as something important like a heading, or should it be more detailed information like something that would belong in the body? The next principle that we'll look at will be alignment. Now, alignment is strategically placing text elements to demonstrate relationships and hierarchies in a document. Now, this can also help with document navigation. This can help the reader basically say, okay, all of the center aligned text are where a new section starts. So if I'm looking for a section, let's say you're writing a paper on the landscape of Hawaii, and your reader just wants to read about palm trees. They are going to scan that document looking for the center align heading that reads palm trees. So you can see how that helps them with navigation. It can also make a document cleaner and more organized. All placement should be and should look intentional. There should be no random placements. Again, if your reader perceives something as random, then they'll think, oh, they just weren't paying attention. And oftentimes readers will say, well, if they weren't looking over their document or reviewing their document before they sent it out with such scrutiny that they allowed this to go through, then again, what else in the document is wrong? So we look at this example here. So we know we've got the title and the author's name. So title by I'm a student, right? So we have center alignment, and that focuses the reader's attention to say, this is where the document starts in its entirety, and this is who put it together. Then of course we've got the heading 1 that is included here. It's left aligned, but we can still see that there's some contrast there. It's a little larger, it's bold. And then the body text that is left aligned as well. You can also think about when you indent in a paragraph. That is a choice regarding alignment that helps with navigation, because especially if you're not using headings, if you're writing more of an academic paper than more of a professional technical document, the indents and that alignment choice helps the reader to understand where certain ideas begin and end. Now, the final principle that we're going to look at will be proximity. Now, this is when you put related items closer to each other. And it helps to find relationships between different texts and images. So especially if in later projects you decide to incorporate, graphs or pie charts or photos or something like that to help the reader fully understand your written text, you want to make sure that whatever that picture is placed in close proximity to the text that it complements. Now with proximity, it can help reduce clutter. So that way you're not, having all of your pages or all of your pictures, let's say on one page, and then saying, oh, you have to go back to page 12 in order to understand the context of this photo. But with this one, you have to go to page 23. So you can see how that helps reduce clutter and helps reduce confusion for the reader. So if we were to look at this example here, so we've got a picture of the Holland building, right? If this description or this text was put on another slide, then it would make no sense. Or if let's say I put this photo of the Holland building with contrast, with the slide on contrast, you probably were wondering, why is there a picture of the Holland building here? That's really odd. It doesn't make sense. Now I'm distracted. But because I put the photo of the Holland building in close proximity to the text that describes it, so the Holland building at Dixie State University, you can understand that their relationship. Now, if I just had the text, the Holland building at Dixie State University on the slide, and again, this image on another slide farther away from it, you may be saying, okay, what about the Holland building at Dixie State University? What are you getting at? Now you understand the relationship that as the writer, I'm trying to say, this is the Holland building at Dixie State University. Here is an image of it. Here's what it looks like, rather than you as the reader saying, I don't understand what you're trying to get at with just this text or just this image. So if you do incorporate additional elements, so things like photos, things like, data visualization like graphs or charts, you do want to make sure that it is in close proximity to the text that it complements and visually explains in greater detail. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to find an ugly document, and that can either be print or digital. Remember, this would be an example, going back, of an ugly document. There's no contrast. There's no clear contrast. There's no repetition. There's no alignment. There's no proximity. There is nothing whatsoever in this document that demonstrates the CRAP principles of document design. So I want you to find something like this. Now it can either be print, So let's say you got a flyer for, let's say, an upcoming, event in the community, or it can be digital. So if it is something that, like a poorly designed infographic that you found on Pinterest. So completely your choice. It just basically is an ugly document, needs to show a blatant disregard or ignorance of the CRAP principles. Now, I want you to compose a brief write-up, so about 75 words, discussing how the document could be improved through more conscious observances of the CRAP principles. So basically, you could say, if we were looking at this ugly document here, maybe I could say, well, contrast would be better included if it was more deliberate. And so maybe greater contrast between Perfect Note Piano Studio. So this, the name of the piano studio, maybe that should be contrasted the most. And in terms of repetition, if we're talking about group lessons, so all information regarding group lessons, so who can come, how much it costs, and then other information regarding time, date, what's also going to go on, like games and refreshments. So maybe create more clear repetition through the use of headings, or through the use of different colors or font styles. In terms of alignment, align like content and put like content into close proximity. So for example, here we see prizes and games. Those seem to logically connect with one another. So maybe they should be placed in greater proximity toward one another, perhaps through alignment and under a repetitive heading that is contrasted appropriately to help guide the reader's eye to that part of the document and that part of the content that the writer wants to get across. So, in your submission, I would like you to include the document either as a link or attachment along with your write-up. So if it's something that you find, let's say like on Pinterest or Reddit, then you can just include a link there. Just make sure that the link works. Or if you want to download it as an attachment, or if you're using a print document, like I said, maybe it's a flyer that was posted on your door. Just take a picture and include it in the document for your weekly homework submission. All right, so that is the end of this mini lecture on document design principles. Now, if you have any questions or if there are any concepts you'd like to discuss further, please don't hesitate to contact me via Canvas's direct messaging system. All right, everyone, until next time.